Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me today, as always, we've got Jameson Maxwell and Ty Lee. And look, we all know there was a football game this weekend. We'll touch on it probably at some point during this episode, but the regular season is over for the Oklahoma Sooners, and we're turning the page. Massive news today. Ben Arbuckle, the offensive coordinator at Washington State, has been hired as the Oklahoma offensive coordinator. In addition to that, it was also seemingly announced that the offensive staff will be retained as well. John Finley, DeMarco Murray, Bill Bedenbaugh, Emmett Jones, all staying.
Are we sure about that?
It seems
sure? Just based off of Brent Venables' statement.
I mean, it seems pretty weird to put that in there and then fire him. You know what I mean? Like, that seems like it was a condition. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, is there a scenario where these people leave to another job? That it doesn't have to be a firing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's certainly possible, but they will be retained, at least initially.
Yeah, it was surprising, to say the least.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit deeper about that decision, whether or not it was the right move a little bit later. But I want to just dive in to talk about Arbuckle. So the guy is, as obviously everyone's talked about in the prelude to his hiring, and obviously today, the guy is crazy young. He is 29 years old. Technically younger than me, which is pretty crazy. He is a couple months. He's a couple months younger than me, which is wild.
I have a question, real quick.
Yeah.
What does technically younger mean? What is the difference between just pure younger and technically younger?
He's pure younger. It was a slip up. So he's a couple months younger than me. Truly wild. Which means that OU's two coordinators are 29 and 30 respectively. But overall, look, his past two his two offenses on the, I don't know if we could call Washington State Power 5, or they were Power 5 last year, Power not 4 this year, have been impressive. So Jameson, what are your thoughts on the hire? Obviously a bit of a risk, but what do you think?
Yeah, my thoughts on this is I know a lot of fans are upset. Like, they wanted bigger and better things. I'm very thankful that we got a guy that around the nation and what was their top 2, top 3 guy. I don't think that this job is maybe as highly sought after as what we probably thought it was. Who knows if this is going to be a guy that can even make it after a year if things bad happen. So, I mean, I'm very thankful that we got this guy. It doesn't matter if it's not a home run hire. I think it's a young guy with a young mind who has a good track record, and young people with new ideas is how you break college football.
Yeah, and I think, to me, a lot of people are kind of naturally and with good reason drawing comparisons to a previous offensive coordinator hire you had, obviously Lincoln Riley. The offense had stalled, so you bring in a young OC that hadn't had a ton of experience, really, from West Texas, of course, air raid style, with some of his previous experience, and that was a bet that worked. And I don't want to say that just because Lincoln Riley worked, or just because hiring young, it isn't a surefire 100% hit rate. But when you think about when you think about previous moves in Oklahoma football history, it does feel like when you're trying to be cutting edge, when you're trying to break the mold, those are things that work. So you do kind of have to give them credit for taking a bit of a risk, for going younger. Obviously doesn't really rock the boat a ton with the style shift. Arbuckle did mention that, he has coached under, pro style, some other different things in the past. So who knows? He mentioned that, he adapts his style to his style to the personnel. We'll see. That's just a press release, whatever. But it will be interesting to see what he brings to this OU offense and how much he can bring to the OU offense, considering that the staff changes themselves aren't that drastic.
Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you think?
I was going to say, you actually touched on right there sort of the biggest thing to me, and that was Arbuckle's own comments about the style that he coaches and sort of coaching to the talent of his players, which I thought was really interesting. Obviously we have very limited information right now, but for the information that I see getting chopped up and served out in the rest of the media is, some of the interpretations of those comments are that he just doesn't have his own style. He hasn't developed his own style yet, which I could very much believe based on those comments and based on his age and based on, you look around and it's not a Lincoln Riley thing where Lincoln Riley was, had his own little sort of new take on the air raid that obviously any OU fan that paid attention to the offense knows that it turned out to be pretty balanced 50-50 run pass under Lincoln Riley for most of the time. But Arbuckle doesn't seem to have that. At the same time, I don't know if that interpretation is necessarily true or fair to say that, he's just saying this because he doesn't have his own style. It could be that his own style that we find really is this sort of fusion of offenses because he's played at a lot of different levels of college football and a lot of different, there's some funky stuff that goes on out in the Mountain West and stuff like that. So it's something that I've seen spun as a negative, but I don't, obviously too soon to call. He hasn't coached a game yet, but could be a positive in there somewhere.
And I think one thing I really do like about him is he's done a lot with not very much. Washington State was a program decimated by kind of being left behind in the Pac-12. Obviously, you go from having Cam Ward year one, which he put up monster numbers with, and this second year he really didn't have as much, but he still put up big numbers. And Jameson, yeah, I don't know. What have you seen out of him this year? And do you have any intrigue in potentially that quarterback he has over there out on the Palouse?
Yeah, top 10 offense, right? Isn't that right? So he's got a lot going for him there. And even though the past couple of games have been a little bit, maybe it's just because he started to interview with us in Utah and he wanted to hold back a little bit on all of his fun, innovative plays. All jokes aside, it really now this opens up a door where the whole conversation is what's the offense going to look like with him and who's going to be the quarterback. And that's the biggest question. I think that he can still call a great play calling sheet with Jackson Arnold as the quarterback, but it seems like it's the writing's on the wall and that Mateer is going to come with him. And if we are having trouble with an offensive scheme, it's going to be really nice to have a quarterback who just played in it last year that can lead the charge and bring everyone together. Because a lot of the times you'll see these first new offensive schemes, it takes a little bit. There's a learning curve. But if you have your leader who's been there and done that and can kind of get all of the guys together and get their ducks in a row, I think just that fact alone may steer me to Mateer over Arnold.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen it firsthand how helpful that can be when Dylan Gabriel, came over to OU. Obviously, was very familiar with Jeff Lebby's scheme, and I thought that was, say what you will about that season, but the offense, was really good. That was, it was clicking when Gabriel was in, and I don't know. I think Mateer, you definitely have to take a look at that. The sophomore out of Little Elm, Texas, 6'1". So
he's got some flair to him. He's
Yeah.
a lot of fun, dual threat kind of guy. My buddy who lives out in Washington says he had a little bit of Johnny Manziel to him. He's a lot of fun to watch. I don't know how many people watched Washington State games this year. And Ty's giving me a weird face, he's got a little bit of it. He's got a little bit of that, break down a play, run around, make something happen.
He plays in the Mountain West. Half the conference is in the top 25.
They play in nowhere.
Conference is in the top 25.
They don't play in the Mountain West
in offense.
But it's the way the eye test on him is he goes out there and he makes plays and he slings the ball. Jackson Arnold You know, if we're going to get him to do that kind of thing, we're going to have to uptick his confidence so much, because this coaching staff is pretty much coached him to not make aggressive plays down the field, because we do not have the play calling, we do not have the receivers, and they don't have the confidence in Jackson Arnold to do it. Mateer does not have any problem for confidence.
And I think that's incredibly, you got to have confidence or else you're just shot as a QB. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I will say, though, it's like, can we really blame Jackson Arnold here? Like you said, he's been hobbled by receivers and basically non-existent coaching. I worry about, how much does Mateer add to this offense next year versus what are the implications of basically screwing over a very elite 5-star recruit, whether he's panned out or not. Right? Like, you bring in some random, Pac-2 guy. I guess I'll cut them out in the West bit, but it's like, I just don't, he gets us 1 or 2 more wins next year when we're probably an 8-win ceiling team.
I think we can take every single bit of 1 win or 2 win extra, Ty.
I don't know.
Especially given the schedule next year, I think
the way recruiting is already going, though.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I think with this, and Ty, you are right. To put the blame on Jackson Arnold and Jackson Arnold himself is not fair to the guy, if you're trying to compare him and Mateer and what we have moving forward. But like Bobby said, confidence is so freaking important. And is Jackson Arnold broken beyond repair? We are.
I don't think so. I think
we're concerned about his confidence coming into his sophomore year, and it continued to show. Like, that's a trend.
I think he's going to look real confident at USC or Oregon next year.
Maybe he needs to leave.
Well, yeah, and I would contend, right, that it's, as long as the storyline is not OU screwed over Jackson Arnold, then OU wins. It's like, if he leaves of his own accord, that's fine. But you can't start to build this reputation of, Brent Venables, not only is he doing whatever the heck he's doing in terms of coaching, but he's screwing over 5-star recruits. Then that's,
I don't think you can say you would screw over Jackson Arnold if you got rid of him, or if you bring in somebody else to bring in competition, because, look, that's just kind of how it is. He did not play well enough to solidify a starting job. And not only that, but, nothing should be given in football. You shouldn't be doing whatever you can to, baby a player, or you should be trying to win games. That should be first and foremost. And you can say what you will about maybe how confidence or whatever was handled this year. Obviously, he didn't have the most weapons, but he also just didn't make the right reads at times, had turnover issues, even, when he wasn't being blasted by a defensive lineman, stuff like that. It was, you could tell he just didn't have that edge to him. And to me, I feel like he didn't do enough this year to garner any special treatment. And frankly, no player should have special treatment. I understand it's the NIL era. I understand it's the portal era. I get that. But at the end of the day, you should be trying to get the best player out there possible. And I think this quarterback room, you have to take a look at the portal. I know some people brought up Hawkins. I think you need to look at all options on the table here. This is dire straits. This is a situation where Brent Venables has to save his job and win X amount of games. We can talk about that later. What would be a success next year? But this is dire. This is if this fails, everyone's fired, and that includes, Castiglione's on the hot seat, something that you would never even think about. This has to work, and you have to pull out all the stops possible, be as lethal, brutal as possible to get the right things done. And I know that's not how Venables is operated. I know that's, not the nicest, friendliest way to operate, but it's got to be pure survival mode at this point. And if that means bringing in Mateer, hey, compete for the job, beat him. If you're better than John Mateer, show it on the practice field and earn that job.
No, that's not going to happen, Bobby. That is you. It's not realistic. There's no
I'm
way.
not saying it's going to happen.
There's
He's not
no
going to do
way,
it.
shape, or form that if Mateer comes here, that Arnold's here. That would be.
Yeah.
You hit the portal and get your bag.
Arnold. Yes, it's one or the other. There is no, you come in, the best man wins, and we breed like contenders here who'll go out there and want to fight and compete and win the job. It's not today's day and age. No way, shape, or form. It's not even a scenario. I'm not even gonna. I understand you're not alone for people saying that, and I think it's a very popular take. I just do not see any way, shape, or form there is going to be a Jackson Arnold and a John Mateer both on campus. And you can quote me, and if I get got for that, that's fine.
No, and I agree with you. I think it's kind of Pollyannish to think that it would happen, but also to me, like, if you want to play at OU and we bring in John Mateer, you can play at OU. But I don't think, obviously, not going to be what decision you would make. But I don't think you make a decision to bring in a John Mateer, or you don't make a decision to bring in John Mateer out of fear of hurting Jackson Arnold or having him transfer. You have to bring in the best guy possible, the guy you feel like works the best with your system. And it's up to him whether or not he leaves. He would clearly leave in that situation. I'm not saying like possibilities, but I'm sorry. That's just how it is. You didn't do enough to solidify this job. We have to look at other options. If you want to fight, you can fight, but we all know which way it's going to go.
No, I think you're right. And that's not a bad outcome. Bobby, you did mention real quick, you did mention that we're sort of dire straits. If this doesn't work out, it's probably a clean house situation when it comes to the coaching staff. So obviously that's one outcome, right, on one end of the spectrum. Can you go over maybe what some of the potential negative consequences might be?
What do you like? I mean, we can talk about it. Like,
so if like right on the positive side, you have whole coaching staff fired.
It's a bit.
Yeah, it was
okay.
a bit.
I see. I waltzed into that one.
I tried to force it in. It was better if Jameson hadn't spoken up. I could have got it in right after you went on.
And I get it. And this is, it feels like potentially. I mean, this could be a lame duck situation, guys. This is a massive, massive risk to bring in a pretty untested, pretty young OC. It's ballsy. It is a big time move, and for Brent Venables' sake, I hope it works out. Am I concerned it was a half measure, maybe a little bit, by retaining the current staff? Maybe a bit.
Well, you saw Dean Blevins' report about Buster Faulkner and Georgia Tech. Did you see that, Bobby?
I did not.
So Buster Faulkner, which a lot of OU fans were a little bit more excited about as a candidate, obviously what he did at Georgia Tech, you could see Haynes King kind of being a similar style of quarterback that you would want to have out of Jackson Arnold moving forward. The report that Dean was saying was we wanted to go after Buster, but he wanted to bring his staff with him, and we wanted to retain our staff. So we backed away from that quickly and had to go quickly outbid Utah to get Arbuckle back and get the job. Because we know we interviewed Arbuckle, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, significant amount of time ago. And then things started to fizzle out. And then he interviewed at Utah after that. So whenever he interviewed at Utah, you're like, maybe we're not going to go after. And then we end up hiring Arbuckle. So kind of honestly, Dino was lubing guys up on Twitter this last weekend, if you guys saw that. But it kind of fits the story, so I kind of believe him on this one. Please tell me y'all saw Dean Blevins' tweets about lubing.
I'm going to be upfront. I don't pay attention to Dean Blevins that much.
Follow
with
him.
all due respect to the legend. With all due respect to the
you never
legend.
know what you're going to get from him on Twitter. Man, he's like the Magic Johnson of Oklahoma football Twitter. If you're curious.
Yeah, maybe so. Because he just sometimes states the obvious, but Dean is Dean.
He went on the sports animal and really hit it hard, and it makes sense. So I think I understand where Oklahoma's board is coming from of not going after Buster Faulkner because of wanting to retain the staff, because you've got to think about recruiting and this whole like you would really set the program back a lot by bringing in a whole new staff and keeping Venables. I think if you're going to clean the house, you got to ditch Venables too. So I don't think taking in an offensive coordinator then cleaning your offensive staff is a good idea unless you're firing everybody.
I mean, I think it makes sense if it's side of the ball. If you're like looking at it as one side of the ball versus another, like I felt like maybe there was a little bit too much retention between Riley's old staff, so still having like DeMarco Murray on, for example.
Well, I think DeMarco Murray should be gone. I think that they need to look at that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do, honestly.
Yeah, that's a situation where maybe they should have let Ohio State outbid them, I guess, or I don't know. I'm pretty out on DeMarco. Love him as a player, but as a running backs coach, he's left a lot to be desired for multiple reasons, as we've talked about here. But I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter now because if they're keeping everybody, we'll see. But I don't know.
I'm not buying it. I understand like the reports like, oh, Arbuckle's going to bring over a couple of analysts and we're not going to keep Johns and who knows, Taylor Schaefer's on staff over there. So it could be, he's one of the quarterback analysts, could be a return. Honestly, it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, I just don't, even though with that report with Brent Venables, are we really in the position to whenever Brent makes statements to where we believe every word he says, is he trustworthy enough? Because I don't know his comments. I don't buy into him for word by word.
I mean, I get it, but it's not like an offhand thing he said at Rudy's. This is an official statement. You know what I mean? This is not just him milling about in a 30-minute press conference.
Yes, someone looked over it.
Yeah,
someone and their strategy in saying this, like they want them to say that, and it could be because of recruiting. And there's a chance that if we completely drop the ball, I mean, like wide receiver, running back recruiting, and then Emmett Jones and DeMarco Murray leave.
Someone looked over this as in like a 19-year-old sophomore who just came back from Thanksgiving break and is just in the journalism college and has a student job, proofreading stuff for the academics or for the athletics department.
Wild job.
It is a good point and a good question mark. It could be, I mean, you can cook up all sorts of, I wasn't lying interpretations of this statement. It turned the clock back to the, I know, painful memory, but Lincoln Riley stating, I will not be the head coach of LSU next year. He could just mean like, I'm excited to see him come down and do bowl practice with this current staff. And then we have a different staff next year. Yeah. Like there's a lot of different ways to interpret it. But I think Jameson said it best, like you can't just take out, like the bourgeoisie and leave Louis and Marie Antoinette, right? You have to take out Venables. You have to get, I don't know what we can and can't say on YouTube. You got to get, Louis and Marie Antoinette first, and then
I guess I get it, but if you think about an offensive staff, then Louis and Antoinette, that was essentially Luttrell, and he's been gone for a while. So I don't know. Regardless, we'll see how it happens. I personally think it was a very clear statement that they intend on keeping all of them, and if they leave, it's off their own volition or getting hired elsewhere, something like that.
There's the thing you just said right there, Bobby. Could they leave on their own, quote, volition, end quote, but behind closed doors, they know, hey, we probably should part ways, but we want it to look like, it was a mutual decision or you're leaving. It's going to be good for your brand, and it's also going to be good for our brand with the recruiting.
Right, but Jameson, I think it would be absolutely absurd if you have an inkling of doing that to put it in your statement. Like, just leave it out. It is so easy to just leave that entire part out and don't mention anything about staff and just let it roll. It's probably very intentional about recruiting.
The recruits want to see it. Yeah.
So the recruits want that consistency. And, if you want to talk about screwing over recruits, retaining them for a while just to kill them a week later.
No, but
it's pretty bad.
If the coach leaves on their own volition, You know, maybe there isn't, like, maybe they do intend for DeMarco Murray to stay. Oklahoma, Brent Venables, you know, Joe Castiglione want, you know, DeMarco Murray and Emmett Jones to stay. But they know behind the scenes that maybe they're considering leaving for the betterment of their careers, and they see that this is a sinking ship. Maybe it is strategic for them to say, we intend on keeping them because it's good for us, but they know in the back of their head that it could be a situation where they do end up leaving.
I think this is just such a specific hypothetical that maybe we're overly diving into.
That is legitimately the point of podcasting.
They could be gaslighting.
I get it. I'm not saying we shouldn't dive into it. I'm just saying we've been talking about it more than maybe a wee bit too much. So we'll see what happens.
Postulating, and I'm not one that has journalism and communication studies in my major. That is not my thing. I have none of that. So I understand.
Where in the world are we even going?
Which is why I'm saying maybe because it's just conjecture, we're talking too much about said conjecture.
That's why
we know nothing.
I'm giving you some props on this, Bobby, because I didn't study in this kind of thing. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of, you know, just spiraling, as is most OU fans are. And I guarantee that this kind of situation is going through people's heads. They're like, I wonder if other people are thinking about this. I know the message boards right now that I was reading, everyone's talking about, oh, we're all these wide receiver decommits, so bye-bye Emmett Jones. You know, I guarantee you, Brent Venables wants Emmett Jones on the staff. There's no doubt in my mind. Does Emmett Jones want to be on the staff?
Well, and it does need to be said, right? Like the offensive staff is not like a monolithic entity. Like it's a bunch of different individuals with very, very different circumstances. Like Emmett Jones specifically and Coach Biedenball on the line, I think are two people that you could certainly have a very, very positive impact on recruiting if we had the right spin on it, right? And there's just a lot of, there's a bunch of different. We could do an hour-long hypothetical podcast for each staff member. You know, Joe John Finley, look at what he's done with the offense and everything else. So,
yeah, that statement has ruined like an entire podcast where we could have broken down each one of them, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out as time goes on. But it's going to be interesting because, I think part of it too is he hasn't really been on this level of college football long enough to have that Rolodex, to have those connections where he can kind of form a staff. You know, he's like I said, he's 29. You know, he has taken what is simply really just a meteoric rise from where he was, you know, even like looking back at like what, 2010 or sorry, not 2010, 2010 he was in high school. I'm sorry. From when he was in high school. No, yeah, well,
he started his life as an infant.
No. So from what 2020 was when he got back into the game, because he was like from what I understand, he was like in finance and just kind of bored and just took a quality control gig at Houston Baptist. So going from that, you know, to where he is now, it's unbelievable. The guy was like nothing. Like if you say like from when we started our podcast to now. So, you know, it's even like, let's say 2021, you know, when Venables first got this job, if someone brought up Ben Arbuckle as an OC candidate, you'd get laughed out of the building. We would be a joke. So now, it's one of those things where maybe this is a good position to just have him hop on the sticks and let everyone else take care of it. Or maybe that's a bad idea because I don't know. Like authority wise, it's kind of an old guard, you know, taking orders from what is essentially, you know, just kind of a kid. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how those dynamics play out. Like a 29-year-old walking up to Bill Biedenbow and telling him what to do. I'm intrigued to see how that works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at his quarterbacks that Ben Arbuckle has had since his time at Western Kentucky. So in 2021, I believe that's his last year, Bailey Zappi's last year. So that dude had a great season. that year got drafted. I don't think he really had much in 2022. But then his first year, Cam Ward at Washington State got that dude an absolute bag in Miami. And then Mateer's going to get an absolute bag by us. So like great track record in terms of producing talent and getting them to where they need at these mid-level, teams, to where like based off that, I think that's a pretty, even though he's only had 4 significant years as a college either quarterbacks coach versus offensive coordinator, I think that's pretty reassuring that he's succeeded with that kind of sample at Western Kentucky and Washington State, and he's had 3 top-notch quality guys that you would hope that Mateer could eventually be a draft pick in the future, but that's 2 draft picks right there beforehand.
Yeah. The doing a lot with a little thing is something I really, really like. I feel like the best coaches can make do with what they have and produce greatness. They don't look at how many injuries we have and all of this and, just throw their hands up and pout. They figure something out. And I like that. I like that about this guy that, he's a grinder, man. He is absolutely just scrapped his way to what is, I know OU's in a bad place, but he has the reins of a historically significant offense. And that's pretty wild for a 29-year-old. And I think you don't get to that level without a lot of hard work, with a lot of smarts, and without a lot of doing more with less. So hopefully you give him the keys to a Ferrari, because he's been grinding it out in a Honda Civic for the past couple of years. So if you can find a way to, maybe not even a Ferrari, maybe like just a decent, a solid sports car.
What is not quite a sports car, Bobby?
I want to be specific. Like a really good Mustang, maybe. I don't know. Like a really
Bobby
good
has
Mustang.
No allegiances in cars that we can talk about.
Not specifically, like a decent, I don't know, Mercedes-Benz, perhaps. I don't know. Just throwing out ideas. But anyways, I'm just saying. No, I think he can go. I think he could do a lot of great things, because I know this offense obviously struggled, but I feel like there's a base of what you can work with, and with the portal, you can really do a lot to inject a lot of offense or a lot of playmakers into this offense and figure it out. I think. I don't know. Is the offense? What do you think?
I think linemen. As long as we get, obviously the line. Not saying they had a great year, right? But I think linemen are the main question mark. I think on the offensive side of the ball, you can I don't want to say pretty easily, but you can pretty well plug and play skill positions. You can plug and play. We're not in a position to plug and play any sort of meaningful, running back. Like we can't pull, what was his name that went from Ole Miss to Ohio State last year? Judkins. Yeah, we can't pull like a Judkins move or something like that. But, I think quarterbacks, there's a fair amount of decent guys, especially if, Mateer, I sort of took an anti-Mateer stance earlier on. But I think if you can pull someone who knows the system and knows the coordinator, you can pull receivers. Like there's a lot of really solid receivers out there. I think there's a lot of really solid receivers on this roster right now that are just injured or maybe, kind of milking an injury to kind of see how things play out. Receivers, obviously, it's also much easier for a younger guy to come in and be kind of breakout, especially if people don't have tape on him and he's quick and a good learner. So I think it's certainly possible. And to Arbuckle's credit, he is a really young guy, but this is very important to me. I hope it's important. I know it'll be important to someone on message boards and something like that, but he does come from a ball knower state. He is from Canadian Texas, which is a ball knower region of a ball knower state. So it's not like we're getting a guy from actual Washington, which would be absolute malpractice, or someone from like the Midwest or something like that, where they don't really know ball.
Yeah. And you bring up, being out in West Texas, there's a lot of Lincoln Riley in this guy. He kind of sounds like him. Kind of has that same like type of vibe in a little bit of way. He seems a lot more personable Just from the clips I've seen of him talking, he seems a little bit more like easy to get along with, a little less quiet. But yeah, no, I'm just saying, I see the ties with West Texas there, which should be interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think we would be remiss to not talk about the recruiting implications coming from all of this, and we're starting to see recruits kind of either tweet stuff, drop, etc. I think the biggest thing looking forward with this is people like, I wonder how this is going to impact Michael Fasusi. Well, number one, straight and away, from what we're reading and all the message boards are saying, it's Texas A&M is definitely prying away and probably is taking a big hit at this lead that we have, and might be that Texas A&M is the favorite from reading the message boards and what the experts are saying on it. But if we have 0% chance of getting him if we don't have Bill Beatonbow, and if we got Buster Faulkner, just say goodbye, probably to Fudge and Fasusi. So I've said this in the past, talent in recruits matter a lot. And you've got a lot of guys hinging on Bill Beatonbow. I think that you've got to be happy that you've got a guy that will come into your program who's an up-and-coming guy that would be willing to take on a coaching staff that's already in place and keep Bill Beatonbow in his position as O-lines coach. Because if we lost Fasusi and Fudge, I think this never-ending cycle of offensive line talent is just another plot on the graph. It's continuing to plummet.
Well, and it seems to me like Foj and it's whatever. They're
he tweeted out that
he tweeted out the lock with the lock with the pen. Seems
with
like
with a contract. It's like maybe we just gave him an NIL deal. Is how I took that. He got locked
signing days in 3 days.
But maybe it was an NIL contract of extra monies we gave him.
I mean, to me, the timing seemed like, okay, that's a lock. You're keeping Beatonbow, and you got a guy like. So, and not only that, but Fasusi retweeted the announcement about Arbuckle. So, this is just tiny details. You never know what's going on in these kids' heads. But to me, I feel like having this done, getting it done early is so good, because you have 3 days to work on them to get your guy in to start. I mean, not building a relationship, because it's 3 days. This isn't a Hallmark. This is not a Hallmark movie. So you could get in, get a little reassurance that they got a guy that you like. You still got Beatonbow, and you could really start to sell them on this vision of an offense. Rather than this rudderless, weird, we're just running Joe John Finley out here trying to do his best, but also Bauer Sharp is throwing interceptions.
Oh my God.
Type of offense, so like having a direction changes a lot. So that should help with closing. It's significantly better than still mulling this over and not having a guy before signing day. That would be something that would really, really screw Oklahoma.
We've done what we needed to do. And will it be enough to keep Fasusi? I don't know. Another thing in terms of the recruiting of the offensive line of going against Texas A&M, we know that Texas A&M are a big competition for Fasusi. Texas A&M right now is also trying to pry away at Lamont Rogers, who is a guy that we wanted as well. He was a high-end 4-star, borderline 5-star kind of guy that ended up committing to Missouri when choosing between Texas A&M and us earlier in the season. And he just decommitted from Missouri. So you would think, like, hey, if Lamont Rogers might go over to Texas A&M, it could be a surplus of things where it's like they just get everybody. But at the same time, like money is money. And you would think that they don't have all of the money to get, Lamont and Fasusi. You would hope that, like, if they get Lamont, we can keep Fasusi kind of thing. Or maybe they thought they were getting Fasusi. We made one more big hit. Maybe we're keeping them in the boat. And now they're throwing all that extra long cash that they thought they could get with Fasusi at Lamont now. So it's going to be an exhilarating next couple of days as we wait to see what Fasusi is going to do.
Yeah. And it's, just paramount that you get this guy in without a doubt. Like OU has to find a way to retain Fasusi. I feel better about it now than I did then, or like a day ago. earlier today, even based on nothing but you have your guy and you can sell on that, because Texas A&M selling you on they don't know what the hell they're doing, and Texas obviously. So having someone where you can kind of sell that vision, get it going, I think will be big. But at this point, we'll see. So
yeah.
hopefully,
Do you even care about the other? I mean, I care about the other recruits, but it's like, like whenever they decommit, I'm like, oh, that's sad. But it's like, as long as it's not Fasusi's edit by Hayes Fawcett. If I have to see a Hayes Fawcett edit with Michael Fasusi committing to Texas A&M, it's just going to be that same freaking picture over and over that we've seen all the time. Like,
Jameson, you know what we should do? We should start a hashtag Fasusi to Norman. That'll convince him. That'll convince him. No one's ever thought of it before. What if we started a Twitter hashtag?
We should tweet at Michael Fasusi and threaten him to stay.
Jameson, we've solved it. We've solved all of our recruiting.
Do you think anyone?
It was never the money after all.
I don't think anyone has ever thought of this. It's probably a really good idea, Sooner Nation.
If we had this idea when we were trying to go get David Hicks, he would have been a Sooner. I'm just saying. And the hashtag would have convinced him.
Could have saved Dindy from now hitting the transfer portal. He didn't have to waste his time at Texas A&M. Look at what we could have done.
Man.
And we were really, really nice to Gabriel Brownlow Dindy whenever he decommitted from Oklahoma and went to Texas A&M. Our fans really took it well. So now that he's in the portal, I'm sure he'd be really excited to come back to Oklahoma. It's not like our fans just trashed him. Sooner fans, please stop burning bridges. It's not smart in today's day and era. I don't see that Dindy's going to ever consider coming back to us, even though it would make sense.
Right. Yeah. That is something that is a bummer. And I mean, fan bases are toxic anywhere on the internet, but OU fans, like, come on, let's keep it chill. Let's keep it chill. So, hell, if something bad happens with Fasusi here, chill out. You never know.
Have you guys ever noticed? Wait, let's look up. How do you spell Fasusi's name?
Fasusi.
Have you guys ever noticed how it's always the recruits who take pictures in the alternate uniforms who are decommitting? Oh, see, Fasusi, I pull up his commitment graphic. He's in a normal uniform. He's in the traditional OU uniform. That's perfect. It's always the ones who take pictures in the alternate uniforms. One day
I did see a lot of Unity uniforms on the timeline with, I think, maybe Marcus Harris or Grayson Harris that just decommitted. I think maybe I saw him in a Unity now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm mixing it up because we've had so many.
When you come on a visit, they should have all three, the home and away traditionals and then the alts, like on a table. And they're just like, you just let them pick and see which one they go towards. And then we'll have like a psychologist there or like an AI to analyze that decision.
Well, what if they pick the old timey ones?
That's when we won championships. So that would be a good sign.
That's our version of 5-star plus. They've won the game. No, okay. So I think we've covered about everything we really know about Arbuckle going forward. Any thoughts before we move on to a little LSU talk?
I'm just thankful that the storm is starting to calm a little bit. And I'm honestly, there is a scenario, Bobby, where OU fans thought we have the pick of the litter of all of these people, that we are wanting. There is a scenario in my head that I was really worried was going to happen, that OU couldn't get anybody that they wanted, and we'd be really, really SOL.
Yeah. It looks like I genuinely do think they got their guy. And look, he's not a one size, or he's not going to like fix everything. He can definitely fix the offense, but this team needs a lot of work. Needs to come through the portal, needs to come through Brent Venables being a better head coach, learning how to smoothing over some of these issues that he's been having for the previous 3 years. And it's going to be a long path. And there's a lot of work to be done for sure. This doesn't save everything. This is not a a blanket solution to a big problem. And, I want to, if you're thinking that everything's going to work out perfectly or anything, I wouldn't go to that point. It's cause for excitement, turning the page, but long ways to go. And simply put, it's got to be better at Oklahoma. I personally kind of think 8-4, anything worse than that gets Venables axed next season.
Damn.
I'm just saying.
That's it. Get ready to axe him then.
Look, I gotta say on the Arbuckle hire, I am optimistic. I am going to, hold judgment until we see what happens. I think again that him not necessarily having his own style thing is certainly a question mark, but it's that's one interview and one press conference. So who knows what that actually is. I'm sure he has a whole idea based on the personnel that he knows or can project that he's going to have and what he can do.
I think it's air raid though, Ty. I think he's just scared to say it because our team is not really suited for an air raid.
You kind of have to be though. We don't have any credible run game, so if you want to move the ball down the field,
pass game, I think that is a bad statement, Ty.
Yeah, but we have the tools. We have the tools. If all the receivers are healthy, we have the tools. The running back room was not impacted.
Are they going to even come back, Ty? Like, do you think they're going to come back? Truth.
I mean, Xavier Robinson's back. Or talking about Robinson's receivers.
Taylor Tatum. I think our run game is like
something about the running backs or the receivers.
Yeah, no, but he's talking about wide receivers.
The receiver
coming back and being healthy. Yeah, but Deion Burks, I don't think he's coming back. I have no source on that. Obviously, I don't have sources for crap, but just like I don't think he's going to come back. Brent Venables was talking about his draft stock in the middle of the freaking season. Like, come on, get out of town. Like, Nick Anderson will have draft stock. Will he want to even come back? Will we see, is this going to do negative or positive for his draft stock coming back to a new system that he's going to have to learn? These older guys, they sit there and they've been through it. Learning a new system is taxing and hard. It's not an easy thing to opt into. So whenever people are looking at that, they've been through Jalil Farouk looks at this and be like, I've been through all of this and I have to come into a new system. You got to buy in. Put a lot of hard effort into it. I don't think there's any guarantee any of our wide receivers are going to come back because anytime there's something new, you never know.
This will be Jalil Farouk's fourth offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild. Yeah, and I think that's fair. It'll be interesting to see how all of that shakes out. The portal season is going to be one of the crazier ones I feel like we've seen. Not really not based on anything you hear about, but it's just kind of obvious that after a tough year, that'll be the case, especially after a turnover. So we'll see. But I will say on the wide receiver room, I feel like wide receivers generally haven't been better, or this is the best environment for good wideouts. Not really at OU because 6 of them, our top 6 got hurt, but I feel like they're a little bit more a dime a dozen than they used to be. Not to say that everybody's
there's a lot of
same.
Opportunity to get a good one in the portal because you're always going to find, Matthew Golden from Houston. You're going to find, Texas got a Wyoming, there's great guys, Trey Harris, coming from La Tech. You're going to find these guys across the nation, moving up and graduating to these P5 schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what it is too is it's TikTok. It's all these kids. They've grown up doing all the dances and stuff, and a lot of those are basically agility drills. So it's producing many more quality wide receivers.
Please, don't laugh, Bobby. Don't laugh. Move on.
Okay.
Just don't laugh
It's
at
not for you guys to laugh. It's that's actual analysis.
Fair enough.
As people laughed about the Michelle Obama school lunch ruining.
Okay. All righty. So look, all right. We don't want to fully rehash OU LSU. Doesn't deserve that at all. But I gotta say, great environment. I loved Baton Rouge. That was a really cool tailgating environment, really cool campus. Fans were honestly awesome. They were really nice. All the ones we ran into. Maybe it's because we didn't have much to play for on both sides. Maybe it's because we beat the hell out of Alabama the week before. But great hospitality at Baton Rouge. Couldn't say enough about how nice they were. It was nice.
Were they acknowledging that they might have been nasty to you all in the past?
I think they kind of like acknowledged that they are intense. And we got a couple tiger baits here and there, which was always fun. Which I would have been disappointed if we didn't get tiger baited. And it was always like they would kind of make a joke about OU and then say they're kidding and then offer you some gumbo or something or a beer or something. It was great. So they weren't like Nebraska, like where they're not going to be mean or not mean. They're not going to joke around. They're kind of friendly. They're lively folk.
Dude, Bobby was on one all of Saturday day. He was like, guys, this is the best. This is so amazing. Like, I just imagine you, Bobby, walking around Baton Rouge. I think you probably had a smile, like ear to ear grin, like the whole time. You were just in heaven. It's like maybe you in a different world would have really enjoyed being an LSU Tiger fan.
There is an alternate reality where I'm born in Louisiana. There's just Cajun Bobby, who is like a diehard Saints fan and a diehard LSU guy, and that reality is I don't know. That I could see it. I could see me being like the literal worst possible LSU fan.
Yeah. And now he's a Chicago Bears fan. It's crazy how this all.
I am very much not a Bears fan, but go on. Ty.
I was just gonna say, no. The probably the only downside of being an LSU fan is that you have to spend 4 years as a student at ULM.
I missed that joke. That didn't compute. But I will say,
like a blend college to that of Texas.
Yeah, you know what? I was just trying to coming back to it. I would never make that joke about A&M because that's a massive school, like Big Ten size. That has a very high admittance rate, but it's an old Texas joke I try to make that I had to rehash.
It's all good.
And the only downside of being a Texas fan is that you have to go to Texas Tech as a student.
We talked about this in the past. I think Bobby would have loved being a Texas A&M fan in an alternative universe as well. Like, can you imagine cult leader Bobby? I can.
Oh, God. I would have absolutely tried to be one of the milkmen telling the bad jokes. Oh, God. These that'll be an dirty Longhorns. Like, it would have absolutely happened.
Panky.
Oh, it would have been so bad. I could see that too. But no, if y'all have a chance to go to LSU, absolutely do it. Don't be afraid of the fans or act like it's going to be a brutal time or anything. A bit of a long drive on the way back, but overall, like, super fun. It's a college football like bucket list item. It was awesome. Hit up the Chimes for me. Great spot. Probably the best gumbo I've ever had in my life there. Just awesome stuff. But yeah, that game sucked though, because it gave you a little bit of hope in the first half, and then everything went to hell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that fumble recovery must have been kind of fun though.
Electric. Oh, it was the best. It was like, oh my God, we think we have a chance. And then kick return.
And that's what that trip made it. You made that trip for that little moment right there. What you felt in that moment, you can't get anywhere else other than sports. And that's why we do it. Everyone listening, you may be looking at this Oklahoma football team, and maybe you're a Dallas Cowboys too, and you're like, why do I do this to myself? You never know what's on that other side. You keep on mining, and you never know when those diamonds are on the other side. Keep on mining. We'll get through it next season.
Yeah. Because one time we'll actually win one at LSU, or like that win against Auburn, or like you keep grinding for that, because those low moments, they really make you appreciate the highs. So I'll say that, and sports obviously, yeah, it's about wins and losses, but as a fan, sometimes you got to look at the things outside of that. Like if I didn't make this trip, I would have missed out on some really fun stuff with some of my best friends of the world. I would have missed out seeing good folks like my good old buddy Tree, who was there, hanging out in the comments, by the way. Like that is what sports are about, is these good times with your friends, all of that. Yeah, you want to win. It sucks when you don't win. But if you don't make it about something else too, kind of missing out, you don't want to let your bad football team ruin, so many other fun things. So I'm happy I went. I had a blast. And I would absolutely recommend it. So just, I don't know, keep on being fans, man. Just keep up, keep on with it. It'll be all right.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about the laws in this country is you legally cannot go to Baton Rouge and try Cajun food without OU also playing there.
I mean, yeah, but why else would you go to Baton Rouge?
To try the food. You just said that was the best part, was the food and the people.
The people. Yeah, but you have to go to an LSU game to get the LSU aspect of it. Like the game itself, like obviously on the field was bad, but the environment, like what they did with, Colin Baton Rouge and, Louisiana Saturday night, like it was a cool experience to be in that stadium for that game. Like, and to see your team run out there, that added to it. Like, obviously the play on the field wasn't great, but there, you know what I mean? There's just something different when your team's out there. Like I was watching LSU versus Mississippi State. That would not have been remotely as cool.
I say Boat Blake is going to have some stuff to say about this spin this Wednesday. Tune in for our Pick'em pod where we bring on Boomer Blake, our fourth OU fan that comes on here, who does not stand for spin takes such as OU losing a lot actually makes it more special when we get a fumble recovery.
That's not what I was quite saying. I was just saying, like, not all.
I think I could play the tape back and pretty firmly in the context of fumble recovery.
I'm saying you got to use.
I get what you're saying.
You're the pain makes the positive stuff even better. Like
I liked it a lot more when we were just winning championships year after year.
I mean, yeah, me too. Like that was also great, but
y'all weren't born during then.
The conference championships.
Oh, who cares about conference championships? If you were happy with the conference championships, I wanted.
Okay.
Well, and I think that's the thing is
we are 6-6, James. You're gonna say
I still
who even cares? Who even cares about conference championships?
I mean, yeah, I played up.
I'll say this: I think the SEC makes you more prepared to win a national title because probably if we ran this team in the Big 12, it wouldn't have been as much of a disaster. And maybe you don't fire Seth Luttrell, and these issues just rot. But now we know what's wrong. And if you can correctly identify the issues, remove the rot, get it figured out, that team that you put together will be way more prepared for national title than any of the Lincoln Riley Big 12 teams or those late stage Bob Stoops ones. It really puts you through the ringer, puts you through the stress test where you have to figure out how to be the football team you need to be to win a title. So I think from that aspect, it is a positive in a way to be in the SEC and take the lumps because you can figure it out. But okay, I don't know what. All right. Anyways,
let's call the podcast. I was putting up the deuces.
That's the podcast. Thank y'all so much for listening and watching all season long. This was a blast. We obviously have one more game with the Bull. We have no idea who it'll be. We'll probably talk about that on Sunday. And yeah. Anyways, for me, Jameson and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod. Thank y'all. See y'all next time. Boomer Sooner, everybody.